I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, March the 15th, brought to you in part by Joplin Regional Stockyards. Got the regular Monday feeder cattle sale here today, 8 a.m. on the start, just 4,000 head on offer, which is quite a bit lighter than what they normally run, but still a pretty decent sale. Don't forget, going out forward, they've got a special cow and bull sale on April the 7th. You want to mark your calendars on that, or if you've got some replacement stock to sell, you might want to look into selling on that sale. They'll have several more buyers on hand for your bred cows and pairs and things like that. Cash dragging, and we've noticed that here pretty much this whole spring so far, but especially this past week, as your futures markets, both live cattle futures and feeder cattle futures, are so far out in front of what is actually happening in the cash market that they just don't really measure up. And it's been kind of a drag for your cattle people, because they look at that futures price because they're under the influence that the cattle market is going to be what those futures prices say. The name of it, the futures market, but it never turns out that way. It evaporates before you get to it, and it just continues to do that. We've especially seen our feeder cattle futures, really launch out there, and they just won't bring it in the sales or in the country on your feeder cattle, because we've got such a disappointing fat cattle market. And we traded fats here. Your weighted average this week on live fats is going to be just around 113.5, and our April live cattle, which is a spot market, ended the week at 119. So we know we're not going to get to 119, so we've got the futures on both fats and feeders way out front. They've got to come together. The feeder cattle market and the March feeders are going to come together here in 2 weeks, and then one more week will get us into April, and it's not very far into those months before you can start tendering for delivery. So likely 3 weeks until your April live cattle measure up with what your cash market is. And don't think that your cash market is going to launch out there and catch it. It's likely going to be your futures are going to back up to it, or some combination of the two. But it's very defeating to watch that out there. This week, a lot of the guys had to have their cattle off wheat pasture unless they owned the wheat, for the most part, because if it was a lease situation, which in most cases it is, you had to have those cattle off that wheat by March the 15th, or else we weren't going to be able to make a crop out of it. So we had big runs all week in your sales around the hard red winter wheat region, Kansas and Oklahoma, and even down in the Texas Panhandle and areas like that. But got a lot of cattle out off of that. I was coming back up to the Texas Panhandle over the weekend, coming back home, and saw, in some areas of North Texas, Vernon, Wichita Falls, and areas like that, still several cattle turned out there. And that's likely their own wheat, and some of it looked pretty good after some of the moisture we've had, and then those warm days and sunshine that we've had the last couple of weeks after that big cold spell that come out. But still cattle out there, and I often say that farmers love to farm, and I'll always stand by that. Whenever it's time to plant, it's time to harvest, things like that, your farmers couldn't think a thing about what their cattle are doing. They're just all into farming. But it's the same way with the cowboys. The cowboys love to run cattle, and it's a lot more likely that they could be better off if they would try to make a crop out of some pretty good wheat patches out there, but they're going to go ahead and graze it off. Why? Because they would a whole lot rather graze cattle than they would farm. So guys are doing that. But we're going to stop talking about our wheat pasture grazing so much, and there's not going to be a whole lot as a whole of grazing out of wheat pastures this year. So we're going to start talking about transitioning into grass, and most of your buying has been done for your big turnout areas like the Flint Hills, the Osage, and places like that, and we'll be turning out on those within a month. April 15th, you can turn out on a lot of those places, especially your double stock pastures there in the Flint Hills. Turn out April the 15th. So a lot of guys have already bought those cattle. They like to keep them up for 30 to 60 days to make sure that they're all straightened out and doing good and everything. Not trying to put a lot of weight on them. They're just trying to get them good and healthy so that they hit the ground running. Whenever they do turn those cattle out on pasture, they've got a short stint there that they're going to be able to graze those cattle, and so they want them to be gaining as good as they can the whole time that they're out there. And that's the name of the game, doing that. So you're not going to buy some sale barn cattle and turn them out within just a few days or a week or even 10 days out in that area, because it's too precious. You can really cheapen those cattle up on those cheap pasture gains on grass, but you've got to have those cattle ready to go whenever they hit the ground. And we've been selling a lot of old crop calf weight yearlings over the past couple of months. So we come into the new year selling those, and then we kind of had a rough winter in spots, especially there 3 weeks ago. Pulled those cattle down a little bit. Well, those cattle looked really good to those grazer operators. So some of those cattle, and we call them old crops, and they are really calf weight yearlings. But even on your fall calvers, most of your fall calvers actually calve in the summertime, and most of your spring calvers actually calve in the winter. And so that's kind of what we're seeing, what we're starting to see a lot of those, and they've got a pretty nice look to them, kind of a split tail and a yearling look on some of those calves that were born last summer and kind of went through a tough winter there, and they're pretty good. Probably not as good as true old croppers, but sometimes those old croppers, if they get too thin and pulled down and roughed up, there's a reason that they look that way. Yeah, they need a good worming for sure, a lot of them do, but sometimes they're pulled down for other reasons. And I used to love to buy those cattle that were really, really super thin and rough looking, in the early spring of the year, late winter. But sometimes you find out that they're pulled down kind of for a reason, and their stomachs just aren't working right, or something like that, and they don't gain as good as maybe a fleshier, softer calf that's been doing good all of his life, and he just keeps right on going. But now we're going to start seeing more of the softer fall calves that were born in the fall, and then we're going to see some smaller bunches of those coming from your weekend warriors, and there'll be plenty of demand for those too. They may not shoot up to the big prices of those thin old croppers or the big prices of some of your long strings of one iron ranch calves, in your sale barns in places like Arkansas and Missouri and things like that. But there'll still be plenty of demand for those cattle, and guys love to turn calves out on grass and lightweight cattle out on grass and watch them grow. But you want to look and see what else has been going on. We've seen a lot of our farmers here in the last week or so that are identifying as black. And the thing I mean about that is, included in that stimulus, $1.9 trillion stimulus deal, that was only 9% true aid for the COVID. 91% of it was for all kinds of pork deals and all kinds of pet projects that some of your Democrats, your liberals, had to push in there. But one of those was, and I'm not sure if this is part of reparations or what, but they're going to forgive 120% of farm loans, but you got to be black through that. And it says minority, but it specifically says black. And so I'm not sure exactly how they can do this anymore. You can pretty much be anything you want to be, right? So I would say that if you could go in there and kind of identify as black, maybe you can make an argument for that. Maybe it's like your CAB deals whenever it's coming through. You only have to be 51% black. If you can meet the other specs within the cooler, or maybe you could be just a really dark colored brindle or a mostly black Holstein that's got a little shape to you. Maybe you could still sneak by. I'm not sure, but we'll see about that. And you guys want to be careful. We had the President Magoo speak on Thursday there, and he promised us that if we're really, really obedient, and everybody gets their shot and everything goes perfect and you guys all wear your masks even when you're driving in your pickup by yourself, we might, just might, be able to have a small picnic on 4th of July. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Let's talk about your futures market for the week last week. April live cattle futures, Monday was up 32 cents, Tuesday up 30 cents. You kind of thought things were coming along. Wednesday it backed off 87 cents, Thursday down a quarter, Friday come back up 47 cents, and it was really higher on your in nearby out fronts. But your April live cattle futures ended the week at 119. That was just a 2-cent change from the end of the previous week. June live cattle futures ended the week at 120.42. When do you ever remember June live cattle being higher than April? Never. 120.42, up 242 for the week. March feeder cattle, Monday was up 75, Tuesday up $1.80. Wednesday it started coming off, down 95 on Wednesday and again on Thursday, back up $1.10 on Friday, and fairly volatile. March feeder cattle ended the week at 136.35. That was $1.75 higher for the week. April ended up 420 with a big jump there on Friday, 143.22 for April. And I'm telling you guys, look out there. If you're turning cattle out, if you turn them out on grass, and I don't care where, but you're going to be selling yearling type feeder cattle in the late summer or early fall, look out there at what the feeder cattle futures are posted out on those. I mean, it's way up in the 150s, you know, halfway up and farther, depending on which month aligns with when you're going to sell those cattle. You might want to take that. If you can find some outfit, usually a corporate feeder or somebody like that, that will give you a basis trade on there, just so many dollars 100 back or forth from the board, you want to get in there and take that. That would probably be your best way to lock that in. Or you could just take a hedge position there, or just buy a put or do something like that. But tell you what, those are pretty darn good prices out there. Better than we hardly ever have. So you want to be, get in there and take a look at those, lock something in, dally up to one of those feeder cattle futures months out in the future there, and then you can just enjoy the summer. You can windshield those cattle once in a while, but you won't have to fret about the market so much, and enjoy your summer a whole lot more. How about some of your grains? March corn ended the week at 5.49 a quarter, starting to kind of settle a little bit. And as I say that, this week it'll probably be really volatile and higher, but kind of starting to settle back a little bit. I don't think we're going to look at $6 corn anytime right now. We had a late in the week WASDE report there for the grains, and it was very, very neutral with no change at all. And I think we can probably just bet on kind of status quo until we start getting to our harvest time, and then it could get a little more volatile there, but then it's going to drop off. Your price is going to get a lot cheaper there, of course, as I imagine we'll have a big bumper crop, because people are going to be planting that stuff from fence row or they're knocking the fence out. They knocked most of the fences out 6 or 8 years ago. They're going to be planting ditch to ditch there. But how about beans ending the week at 14.15 3/4? Let's talk about your fat cattle trade through Thursday of last week in your 5-area feeding region. 72,000 head, and then a little bit more cleanup on Friday. So one of our better dispersals of the week show list than what we've seen here of late for a while. But your prices on live steers and heifers ranged from 110 to 115. We know that's not very good. We know we're kind of working mostly on a 114 market for about 6 weeks now. But when you see the spread on the lower side of that, 110 to 115, you know it wasn't any more better than that. And so your market was steady but kind of weak. But your weighted average on live steers, 113.59 through Thursday. Well, it could actually get helped a little bit, because your Friday sales were a little bit stronger, and it was weak from the start of the week all the way through Thursday. Just kept getting progressively weaker, but Friday it was a little bit stronger, and that was mostly due to some basis deals that were signed on Thursday. How about your dress market? 177 to 184 through the week. mostly 178 to 180, but not as much 82 as what we saw the previous week. But your weighted average on dress steers 179.31, and so it was off the pace just a little bit there. But like I mentioned there, on Thursday, that's when your packers really come out and were offering basis trades there, and they were offering from $1 to $3 a hundred higher on your June contracts there, April and June, and for delivery this spring. And you look at what those prices are on the board, and yeah, that's going to give you well over $1.20 for your fat cattle. And we've been thinking we were going to get a $1.20 fat cattle market, but they keep finding ways to buy cattle out front and then build up their captive supplies, so they don't have to get aggressive on your spot trade cattle, on your cash cattle that they trade every week. And like I said, they was able to keep the market at 114 or under this week again. And it also helps them keep those base prices low for their formula deals. So packers are doing a really good job of keeping the market down, keeping their biggest input price down quite a bit. But it did actually help a little bit of the cash trade on Friday. Not a lot, but it was some stronger there. If the guys would just really dig in. And I know these packers are coming out and telling you that they don't need cattle till the middle of the summer, and they're telling you this and they're telling you that, and they just make ugly faces when you tell them that you're going to stick to maybe $1.18 asking price. They can make ugly faces all they want. But if you don't sell them any cattle, if the guys could kind of get their heads together, could maybe get the market up a little bit, depending on what the board does early in the week. But Friday cleanup trades, about 1,350 in Iowa from 112 to 114, but that's really better than what they were selling them like live on Wednesday and Thursday, and a few at 178 dressed. Nebraska, about 2,000 head on Friday, all at 114 and 180. Kansas, 3,700 head confirmed on Friday, all at 114, and that was a little encouraging because they had a spread on that in the middle of the week from 113 to 114. Texas, just a few loads there at 114. Box beef cutout values for the week last week, your weighted average on all of your trades last week, choice cuts down $6.40 on your weighted average at 227.99, and it was actually a little bit lower than that to end the week. Selects kind of the same way. It was lower than this at the end of the week, but your weighted average on all your select trades through the week last week, the weighted average was 221.42, and that was down $2.70 from the weighted average from the previous week. And decent moderate movement there of 628 loads, cuts, grinds, and trimmings. What else is going on? If you guys are in the western United States, especially in the southern west, we're going to be at Nevada Livestock Marketing, which you guys know I'll go out there quite a bit to help Jack Payne there with his specials. But this Wednesday evening, and I believe it's at 6 o'clock local time, he's going to be providing meal and beverage, and I'm going to be speaking there, giving a presentation kind of on the situation of the commercial cattle marketing right now, with an emphasis on Deb Fisher's Cattle Market Transparency Act bill. So if you guys want to come out to that, it's free, and you can. Kids are going to be right there at the sale barn, and we hope to see a lot of you there. Then he's going to have another one of those big monthly specials on Thursday, expecting around 4,000 right now. Wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get a few more than that. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction. Late in the week there and over the weekend, 133.28, your latest RTI, and that was 55 cents lower than the end of the previous week. But really, that's not bad. 55 cents per hundred. That's not too much to be lower. And so, how did your cash cattle, feeder cattle, I say yearlings, but most of them were big calves, but feeder type cattle going into the feedlot, how did they sell through the week? Well, they ended up close to steady, but early in the week they were steady to a couple bucks lower, and then we saw some higher prices on your futures and got into some premium type sales. Later in the week they were steady to $2 higher. Finished out the week pretty good with some big gains on your back months on your feeder cattle. And so ended up pretty much close to steady, but like I said, early part of the week steady to a couple bucks lower, late part of the week steady to a couple bucks higher. How about your lighter weights, calves and stockers? Very uneven. Some places sharply higher, some places sharply lower, some places had the steers higher and the heifers lower, and some places the opposite. So just very volatile on your lighter weights. And like I said, most of you guys want to buy those old crop calf weight yearlings, but you know, there's fewer and fewer of them around. And like I said, if they look too good to be true, they might be, and then there's more and more of your lighter weights are being made up of the softer new crop calves. But let's talk about your individual quotes late in the week there, towards the end of the week. Bluegrass Stockyards, Richmond, Kentucky there. I tell you what, you know, you could go out there and buy some cattle that's been put together and been together for quite a while, and then bring them out there and graze them. Guys love to take crossbreds to the Flint Hills and places, and a lot of those have a little more age than they do size, and they've got a lot of frame to them, and they'll explode when you take them out there. But you drive out through the Flint Hills here in a couple of months, and you're going to see a lot of crossbred cattle and a lot of colored up kind of cattle. And they're not hard to sell whenever it comes midsummer and time to sell them, because those cattle perform well in the feedlot too, and they're still going to have a lot of warm weather to feed in towards the late part of the summer and early fall that's so hot. But Bluegrass Stockyards in Richmond sold 60 head, 607 pound stocker type steers at $153.40, and then you got to put the freight on them, and that's going to make them really cost something by the time you get them out there. But be the kind of cattle you want, and that's kind of a top quote for where those cattle sold at. How about Eastern Missouri Commission Company in Bowling Green? My friends there sold 65 head, 757 pound steers at $143.25. That's a pretty good quote right there. But the best quote that I saw late in the week last week, and your Zach Tran top quote for the day, Lexington Livestock Market, Lexington, Nebraska, 151 head, 610 pound steers at $171. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.